Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grief Recovery Week 3. What I want to do today is I want to just read the chapter from the Grief Recovery book and then talk about some of the subject matters that are in this chapter because it is so relevant. Because the chapter is called We Are Ill Prepared to Deal with Loss. Shortly after the loss you experienced, you probably became acutely aware of how ill prepared you were to deal with the conflicting mass of emotions we call grief. The same is true for almost everyone in our society. We are far better prepared to deal with minor accidents than we are to deal with grief. We receive more education about simple first aid than we do death, divorce, and other emotional losses. Stop and consider your own experience. In grade school, you took a class on first aid. In high school, you took a class on health and safety. The local Red Cross offers classes on first aid in the community. Nationwide, we have a convenient 911 that's in America to call in case of an emergency. In some level, we're all prepared to take action if an accident occurs in our presence. How many classes have you taken on to deal with grief caused by a significant emotional loss? Most of us can say, not any of us have ever done that, unless you have begun joining classes like this. We think it's strange that we all know what to do if someone breaks an arm, but very few people are prepared to assist grievers. 8 million people become grievers each year. Owing to death alone. In addition, the divorce rate exceeds 45%. This statistics does not include relationships that were never formalized by marriage. Many millions of relationships end annually, affecting not only the couple, but children, parents, other relatives, and friends. It is estimated that more than 14 million pets die per year in the United States alone. When you add that many millions of lost experiences related to retirement, job loss, change, medical problems, and minor financial changes or major financial changes, the numbers are staggering. We're taught how to acquire things, not what to do when we lose them. In our formative years, an overwhelming emphasis is placed on learning how to acquire things in order to make life successful and happy. In early childhood, we try to acquire our parents' praise. Later, we try to acquire toys at Christmas or Hanukkah by being good. We try to earn high grades in school in order to gain approval. We try to look attractive to our peers so that we can be accepted. This process of learning how to acquire objects and attention continues into our adult lives. Continuing to advertising industry understands this phenomena. Marketing campaigns focus on finding happiness and contentment through the acquisitions of things. While we have learned much about acquiring things, we have precious little accurate information on what to do when we lose them. Loss is inevitable. Sometimes loss is even predictable. In spite of these truths, we recognize no formal training on how to respond to the events that we are guaranteed to happen and sure to cause pain and disruption. So, on that part, I want to go ahead and skip over this next little part here because it's just, rewording pretty much what they were already saying at the beginning and just using different little scenarios. So I want to really take those two parts and begin looking at ours right now. For myself personally, grief has come to me in many forms and many ways. I have had the health issues that left me unable to do anything for quite some time, multiple times in my life. I have suffered and overcome cancer. I have been down for 2+ years because of rehabilitation after an injury that took out my foot. And they told me I would be paralyzed, and I'm not. I did the work that was necessary. I've had loss of loved ones. I've recently lost a family member from marriage. My sister has lost her husband, and they were together over 20 years. So they were inseparable. There was lots of things that I worked with them both through over the years. So losing him was very emotional. My nephew, losing his father broke my heart to see how much he was broken. There's a lot of things that we deal with. For you, Carol, I know that you've lost your husband, but you've also faced the loss of your own compromised health.
Yeah.
And those two things can be very overwhelming. So, can you remember how, while you were growing up, how easy it was, and even into all of the years of your life? Have you noticed how easy it is for us to develop a way to gain, but not to process loss?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Now, if we look at the fact that loss is something that we all go through, which I'm going to talk about from scripture and not use this book for a minute, I just want to talk about scripture. And I want to talk about the Ecclesiastes 3. When we look at scripture, it says that there is a time for everything and a season for everything under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter the stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, and a time for war and a time for peace. Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8 is very, very vital information for us because that sets the stage. It shows us that everything and all things are working for us. Even when we're dealing with the struggle, there's a time for the struggle. But we are easily reminded rather quickly when we look at that word that even though it's so that we have the time for the gather, for the time for the love. So when we are suffering something, it is a setup to bring us to that joyous place in our life. But how do we transcend it and actually begin understanding that? And that's what I wanted to bring us to next. We're taught we're taught about the myth dealing with grief. And what is that? We're going to go ahead and dive in and find out. It says here in the book, before we can discuss what recovery is, it's important to look at what it isn't. We must be clear about why we need to find a new way to deal with loss. We begin by clarifying an understanding of how we have dealt with loss in the past. We will use John Russell's experiences of loss as illustrations. John's first memory about learning to deal with loss comes from when he was 5 years old. We had a family dog. This dog adopted me from the moment I arrived home from the hospital. When I was old enough to crawl, I'd pull the dog's tail and she'd let me get away with it. The dog would go everywhere with me. As I grew older, I tried to teach the dog to retrieve. To this day, I'm not sure who taught whom to retrieve. The dog always found a way to sleep with me each night. This drove my mother to distraction, but the dog and I were persistent, and eventually mom gave up. Then one morning, I called to my dog and she wouldn't get up. I remember how cold she felt when I touched her. I remember being afraid. I called to my mother to help me. My mom told me that my dog had died. I'm certain she tried to explain what death was, and I'm also certain she didn't know how. For the next several days after the dog died, John cried a lot and spent a great time in his room. His parents felt inadequate in knowing what to do to help me. He remembered finally, in total frustration, John's father said, "Don't cry. On Saturday, we'll get you a new dog." Now, that doesn't sound like such a profound sentence, but let's look a little closer. Learn by many different methods. One thing is called influence learning. A child is born into a family. During the first few years, the child's primary contact is with his and her parents. The child learns from watching and emanating what she or he and their parents do. Usually by 18 or 24 months, the child has gained verbal skills. From this point forward, the child can not only see what his parents are doing, but can understand what they say. John's father's words carried the following message: "Don't cry," meaning don't feel bad. "On Saturday, we'll get you a new dog," meaning replace the loss. John believed his father. He began to form a belief about dealing with loss. He tried to follow his father's advice and not feel bad. To a young child who wanted his father's approval, this was a powerful communication from the most important authority figure in his life. As John explains, "I thought if this is the way my father deals with death, then this is the way I'm supposed to deal with death." Sure enough, on Saturday, John's dad took him to the kennel and they got a new dog. I still missed my old dog, but I didn't tell anyone. I didn't think they'd approve. After a long period of time, I actually forgot about my old dog. I also found it hard to love the new dog in the same way I loved the old dog, and I didn't know why. It's possible, in fact, likely, that John didn't love the new dog because he wasn't emotionally complete with the old dog. When John was 14, he fell in love for the first time. It may have been puppy love, but it sure felt like the real thing to him. It was wonderful. I was preoccupied with thoughts of her all the time. I had trouble eating and sleeping. The birds sang. I listened to the love song on the radio. I didn't hang out with my friends as much. When we broke up, I was devastated. This was a major loss for me. For days, I wandered around like a wounded duck. Finally, my mother couldn't take it anymore, and his mother said was, "Don't feel bad. There are plenty of fish in the sea." At this point, John had gotten a clear idea of what to do when you lose something. He was going to force it onto life, armed with two pieces of information of dealing with loss. Don't feel bad, replace the loss. And again, with story after story, we can replace where most people are taught: don't feel the pain, replace the loss. Grieve alone, just give it time. Be strong for others and keep busy. But all of these things, in all reality, are literally just a blanket phrase to make us stuff down the pain that we're really feeling.
True.
Participating in our own recovery. Earlier, we talked about the fact that grievers have been taught to isolate themselves. You probably experienced first, the mind has access only to what has happened and it has learned. It cannot use what it doesn't know yet. If you're given only misinformation, that's all you have access to. Second, the information stored in our mind is stored with important attachments. That means the more important the source of information, the more tenaciously we believe it is right. Most of the data John and Russell acquired about loss came from their parents. To a child, parents are a very important source of information. Third, the mind's job is to believe that whatever it has stored in it is always right. This is why people are so critical of each other. If you believe you're right and others don't agree with you, they must be wrong. It's for the reasons that we persist in using misinformation in trying to process the feelings caused by loss. We believe that what we already know about the loss is right. The fact that you are reading this book implies that what you have practiced is not delivering the relief and the sense of well-being you want to and deserve. If you will accept the simple premise that you practiced and habituated some incorrect ideas, then you can allow that if you practice some correct ideas, you will have different results. We will give you correct information to help you discover and complete what is unfinished between you and others, living or dead. You must take action and practice what you learn here. This is going to be part of where I share with you, Carol, and anyone listening to this recording. Part of what I have taught in my course called The Art of Learning Self-Love came from some of the developments that I learned through my own personal growth, through some of this grief recovery, through some of the other systems and things that I learned along the way. But one of the things I can say is the grief recovery was the key to the Art of Learning Self-Love that assisted Lorraine in processing and learning how to build a relationship with her father before it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
That was a tremendous, and I wish she was here to talk about it. It was a tremendous healing for her. Even while she was in the process of grieving, she was doing both processes at the same time. She was learning how to process what was happening while she was losing. That changed the dynamics of how she could actually continue after. And we know that even though it was still a heavy effect, no matter how much we prepare ourselves, we are never fully prepared for the effects that we will experience. We never know what it is, those subtle little things that happen throughout the day that trigger us. We don't know what it's going to be. It could be a scent of something. It can be a reminder of when we did for someone else. It can be that moment. Sorry. Needed that. But it can be those reminders of what we did for someone else. And when we step into it, it could be like a landmine for us. My personal experience recently with understanding that to its core was I went to a city and a state that I used to live in, and I spent a lot of time in that city and state and knew a lot of people. Out of the feelings and the emotions that I've carried for many, many years, I was eager and excited about going back because I thought I would rekindle and rebuild all of those amazing friendships that I had back in the day. And when I got there, nobody really had any time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Gotcha.
I realized I had been the investor in the time the whole time. But I realized something. To be in a real relationship, it takes two people.
Right.
Even if it's a friendship, both have to be
Mhm.
participants. And it was a hard lesson to learn that I was the only participant in many of my friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it came with a lot of loss when I walked away from that because I had to realize I didn't have anything except what I had built. And that wasn't reciprocated. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, that was a pain. It was a major loss. I lost what I perceived as many friends to
Yes.
realizing that I was left with maybe a handful
Mm-hmm.
that were really there. And but our perception can build an entire elaborate story to be ultimately false. Because I spent the time making contacts every day, making the time to acknowledge people, just because I interacted on their things that they were sharing, I wasn't getting the same response.
Uh-huh.
Nobody was really paying attention while I was. Just because I was invested doesn't mean somebody else is going to be. And when you
Mm-hmm.
finally realize that, that comes as a loss because you're like, wow, I really thought I had more people in my court. And I really don't.
Yeah. I hear you.
You're like, you can really resonate with that, huh?
Right.
So, how do you find that in your life right now? That's not, related to the death, but the loss of things in just your regular everyday. How are you feeling that loss right now, Carol?
I all the years the kids were growing up, I, well, along with cooking and baking, I would do sewing. And that was a release for me, like a therapeutic thing to do. And like I told you before, my mind was always working, always thinking of something next to do. And I have got at least 2 dozen things that I'd like to get done that I just cannot do. And I was just thinking as you were going through the readings and that I'm sure my sense of grief would have been totally different had I not had to go through the health issues that I had. I can't even imagine what I would feel because everything was so overshadowed by my health. And I know it affected the girls, um, and still does. And they were here the other night, and it was just wonderful to have them together, to be together with them because right now I'm alone so much of the time, and all I have to think about is me. And I wonder what they're doing and how things are going. But I mean, they've got a full life. They've got things to do and things that they want to do. So yeah, it would have been totally different for me. But I have to accept what I'm handed. We can't change fate. It
Right.
is what it is.
That is the one piece, Carol, that you have that most people don't. And I want you to know that. The reason why you don't have such a hard time processing this is you learned very early that loss was part of it, and it is what it is. You learned that phrase, it is what it is. There's nothing you can do to change it. Knowing that
Right.
you cannot change a circumstance and that nothing you can do to wish it back can change it, knowing those details help us to process faster. But that doesn't discredit the feelings that you are having. And just because we have that skill to bounce back quickly, doesn't
Hmm.
that it doesn't still hurt.
Right.
Sometimes people will take our strength in processing and think that we're okay when in all actuality, we're really not okay.
We're not, yes, that we're not feeling things that they're feeling. Right.
And it's just because we know how to accept. Most people deny. Most people can't own the feelings that they have to process. So you are a step ahead in what you are doing for yourself, Carol, and that's actually very admirable and needs to be recognized. You have a skill that most people don't. Most people function, throw it all down, have their big, huge episode, freak out, and then try to figure out what pieces of it they need to pick back up. Where yourself, because you've had to learn things so early in life, dealing with developments, having to take on responsibilities well before you were ready to, and having to adjust yourself to those things, it gave you a skill set that when something happens, you can process it into it is what it is. And that it is what it is literally opens you up to go, okay, as hard as this is, I can see a path. And I'm going to go climb in that path and I'm going to do whatever it takes and I will get over this. It's an admirable quality that you have, Carol, but it can be so daunting and so painful while you process that. And you probably do a lot of processing quietly and alone, where you
Yeah.
don't bother anybody else with what's going on. If somebody came into your circuit, into your arena, your area, came into your home and sat down at the end of the couch and said, it is what it is, and it really sucks, but I'm okay. How quickly would you know that they're really not okay?
Right away,
Because
because it's a false facade that they're showing. They're to have to say that, you know, they're not okay.
yeah, but what it is we have an extreme, amazing coping skill. We learned how to cope, even in the most uncomfortable situations.
Yeah,
And that is a strength within you, Carol. So I want to give you credit for your strength. The same reason you acknowledged mine.
yeah, yeah.
We've been through it.
We've been through it.
Wow.
Oh, you have been through far more than I could even imagine. And I admire you for that, that you've turned it into a positive and that you're helping others that need it.
Um, for me, Carol, when I realized that I spent my whole life climbing out of that hole on my own because I didn't know that there were other people that really did want to reach in and help me because they had no clue that there were those people around me helping me. And I was oblivious to the help that I was really receiving because I wasn't in a space yet to have a knowledge yet. Though I went through those things, there was always a guiding light. There was always someone. Every time I look back now, but when I was going through it, I couldn't see no one and it was complete pitch black.
Uh-huh.
That path seems so alone. But when we're doing our soul work, it is alone. The soul work starts within us and begins to transpire and go outside of us. But how do we get to that transpiring space? It is the process. I am grateful. I chose the path that I chose to assist others because I didn't want others to feel alone like I did. I can
Yeah.
remember how desperate I was for someone to just understand what I was saying. It broke my heart over and over again to go into counselors' offices, talk to counselors, and literally have to be the person to pull them back together to go get another counselor that could counsel them so that I could tell them what happened because I broke a counselor. And I didn't mean to. I was just like, oh, you really want the whole story? Let me tell you the story.
Right.
And then
Yes,
he was sitting there going, I don't know how to deal with this story. You just traumatized me. And I went,
for
hold on,
sure.
let me go get somebody. I will be, just stay right where you're at. We're going to work this out. I'll go get some help. Hold on. And I would get up in my,
I've heard that
go get
before,
somebody and bring them into the room and go, okay,
Yeah,
well, we got to counsel the counselor. Let
I've
me
heard
help.
that scenario. Certainly, yes. And amazingly, I've never had counseling. A lot of people have. I have never had it. From a counselor or a therapist or whatever. Uh, Maybe I needed it, but I'm getting it now.
What I think has happened though is what's
Sorry.
available today is the resources developed because of people like yourself and myself who went through things and decided that's not happening anymore. That's not, because my mom didn't receive help and my mom had some major traumas. And now, as an adult, she's like, I ain't even going to deal with that. I don't even want to touch it. I don't even want to look at it. I learned how to put that away and leave it there.
Yeah.
So what my mom's like one of those people that they consider what I think it's the baby boomers era.
Yeah.
I think that's her era is what it's called is the baby boomers. And the era was you all were trained to you just get up. You don't have time to talk about the nonsense is what they
Yeah.
would consider it. If you had an emotion about something, your job was to stuff it and deal with it later and get up, leave your shit at the door when you come to work, pick it up on your way home, make your home and your job, and leave everything where it belongs. Everything has a place.
Yes.
And that was how things were ran. Everything had its place. The reason why was because nobody was equipped to deal with the damages. People who went through some of those damages were the ones that later finally decided, because of different rules that were going on with the government, looking at different things that they were establishing as being like back in the 70s when they finally started allowing businesses and places to recognize those who were disabled. Things that happened during the 80s that brought attention to major epidemics that were happening around the world, people finally rose up. When the walls came tumbling down, that changed the world. When the towers crashed, it changed the world. Circumstances and situations around us changed the dynamics of how we were going to deal with things introspectively. And that's what I've learned is along the way was I chose to step into this world and make it my passion. I knew what loss felt like so deeply that I didn't want anybody else to have to carry that hole in their soul by themselves. And that's why I do what I do every day.
So that they can deal with it. Yes.
So that somebody has somebody to be a comforter,
Uh-huh.
supposed to be a comforter in this world.
Right.
And this is going to sound really wildly strange, but I really believe what I've come to realize. In 2019, on February 14th, I had a massive heart attack while I was working at a store called Brookshire Brothers. It was probably around 7:30 p.m. on Valentine's Day.
Mm.
I was standing on register 2 and I was moving product down the aisle and walking back and forth from the office to the floor because we were having a busy day because it was a holiday. Major sales, multiple things going on, selling flowers, selling the candies, doing dinners, doing this at the store. And I was working in the office and maintaining the floor. I was the person who was running the whole front end of a store. was also during one of the best points of my life. I'd finished publishing a book. Everything was extravagant. I was building and I was doing speaking events and I was doing book signings and all of this stuff was happening. So I was burning the candle at both ends. I was wearing
Mm,
myself out. And February 14th changed my entire life.
mm,
I stood there as the pain felt like it had struck me like a Mack truck. It hit me in the center of my chest.
mm-hmm.
I felt this pain that went up into my jaw and into my ear, and I couldn't open my mouth.
Mm,
Pain shot down my arm and down my side. And all I could do was keep hitting myself in the chest.
mm.
While I was hitting myself in the chest, I was still trying to throw groceries across the conveyor belt.
God.
So that's where I was at. And I
Wow.
was trying to get attention as my body was falling weak and I almost collapsed. I grabbed the counter next to me and I turned because I saw my boss walking past and I hollered as much as I could with gritted teeth in the pain. I said, somebody needs to take over. I need to go home. I need to go to the hospital.
Mm,
Comes over and she's like, what is going on? And she goes, Darla, I said, now I need to do something. And she goes, oh my God, can you do me a favor? I'll take over this. Will you go check your blood pressure? Come back and tell me what it is. I walked over, I got my blood pressure. It was 197 over 176.
oh my God.
I was completely disoriented. My heart rate was 156.
Wow.
She immediately, when I told her what it was, she told me to go in that other room. It was like a little side office. She told
Yeah.
me to go sit in there with the lights out, and she would be right there. She said, grab a water on the way and start drinking it and sit upright. Drink the water. Never once did anyone call a paramedic.
Mm,
I was left in that room for 45 minutes after she walked in with 2 aspirins and another water. She says, when you finish the second water, you can come back out to the floor.
oh God.
I had no self worth at this moment. I was just beginning to build the art of learning self love. So I had no self worth yet. I didn't realize the severity of what I was really going through. I knew I didn't feel right. I knew my legs felt like lead. I felt like I was walking through sludge the rest of the night. I felt like I was in iron grips around my ankles, is what it really felt
Oh
like.
my God. You didn't go to the hospital?
Nope. I went home and I wrote a column for a newspaper
Oh God.
and went to sleep.
Ay, ay, ay.
I got up the next day still feeling completely out of sorts, still having pain to move.
Yeah.
I was having excruciating pain. And I called the doctor's office and they said, hey, we'll get you in. Can you come in on this day? So I went in.
Oh,
They ran the EKG on me or whatever, the electrodes, and they got that. And she's looking at the results and she goes, oh God, you need to go to the doctor. You've got permanent damage.
ay.
Oh no, no one caught you made it through a heart attack. You made it. Women
Oh,
don't normally make it through what you just went through. She goes, normally women go out on the first one.
yeah.
She goes, you are so, so lucky, Darla. We got to get you some medical attention. You need to go let your boss know. I took the paperwork in and I told my boss, and my boss, what are you saying? I said, well, they asked me to take 2 weeks off for a break. Here's the situation. Well, he went ahead and took that information from me, went and called corporate, and corporate made a different decision. I got to the end of that shift and went to clock out. I ran my card to clock out, and my boss handed me back my papers and said, by the way, here's another one. Till you go to a doctor and get cleared, you can't come back to work. Goodbye. Thank you
Mm,
for your service today. He was
Mm.
supposed to, according to that paperwork, the minute he got that paperwork, he was supposed to give it to me and release me from the floor that day. He kept me through my whole shift.
Wow.
I realized that moment how undervalued I really was. That moment taught me that I needed to do something to help people understand how to love themselves first. Because had I loved myself enough at that moment when I had the heart attack, I would have known to walk away from that register
Right.
straight over to the phone and call for my own paramedics.
Right. That
But
would have been me, Darla.
but because I didn't know my own self-worth at the time,
Oh my God.
I would have died at the hands of everyone else around me because nobody else cared. That was a major turning point in my life.
I'm glad to hear that.
That one was really, and so I understand the loss behind having medical conditions because
You know, you are right. The Lord has something in store for you, and you picked up on it, and you're following through. Good for you. Kudos to you. I have to praise you for that. That is something that most people would never realize, but you did. Thank God for that.
he was all I had, Carol, for a long.
Yeah, I hear you. Yes, I hear you.
That was all I had. And that's generally where most of our strength, us who are stronger in nature and able to endure some of these hardships, that's generally what it is we have a really devoted relationship with the true source. When we can dedicate ourselves to that and stay in that integrity and that honor and that love, it just naturally flows in, just naturally.
Well, you picked up on your calling. Thank goodness for that.
I tripped and fell in it. I ain't gonna lie. I tripped and fell down in it and I was broken down on my knees going, I'm gonna die.
Oh God.
No, you're not. I'm gonna pick you back up, put you back together, dust you off, and go send you out there to help the world.
Yeah,
What he did.
yeah. Fix you up and send you on your way.
He really did. And before I let you go today, because we are after the hour, I want to
Yes.
take you through the fountain. Have we done the fountain healing yet?
No.
Okay. It is a gift God gave me. I'm going to tell you how it happened so that you know how I got it. I got it in a dream. I had been taken, and at the time, in my perspective, I thought I was in God's mansion, the great mansion in heaven. And I thought I was in a library in the mansion. Later, I
Mm.
came to learn from other teachings and things that I've dove into. I've learned that I was in the Akashic records. There is a space that is held eternally for all of us. Every story that has ever been, ever will be, or ever has been is in that space because God already knows the whole thing from beginning to end. So there's a records, and I happened to go through those. I didn't get to go through the records, but like I didn't get to pull them and read them. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to. I was being walked through those halls with an angel, and the angel was like watching me and my curiosity. I was such like an inquisitive little kid, like, ooh, let me go find out. Like I'm in heaven, I'm doing this, like what are we doing? And I'm walking with the angel, and I was like, realized off in the corner there was this area that was under construction. And I was like, aren't I in heaven? Why is there construction going on in heaven? Heaven's perfect.
Mm.
Why is there construction? And she's like, oh, come with me. You have to go. You can't be in here. You're gonna get in everything. You're gonna mess everything up. Get out of here. She was like, oh, like, and it was so funny. She was like me. She looked like me, but she was huge.
Oh wow.
She was an angel. And it was like I'm walking with me, but not with me. The energy, the personality, all of it was just like me. Just the she's like, oh, you're gonna get yourself in trouble in here, Darla. Let's go. Like, and then she takes me and opens up these two big corridors and like shoves me into this bubble, which
Oh,
takes me off. And I'm up, down, all around, but I'm staying in the same position inside this bubble as it's just spinning and going everywhere. Then I land on this piece of grass in front of two gates that were closed. And they were all lit up like a bright white light. And I'm standing there on this grass after being released from this bubble. And I'm like, so the doors creep open and I just slip in because I feel like I need to be in there. And I start looking around and there's some trees over here and there's this other grassy area over here. And there's this path that goes off and around. And I'm like, so I go and I hide behind a tree because everywhere there are angels, from little bitty things like little pixie size to all of a sudden like huge, massive, gigantic angels with wings. And I'm just like standing there like, so I'm hiding behind a tree in this garden. And I hear this little tiny little, what I thought might have been an angel or a fairy. I wasn't sure what it really was.
yeah.
Up to the fountain, this massive fountain, huge. Like the base of it had to have been, it has to be like 2 blocks, okay?
Wow.
It looked like this,
Yes.
okay? So
Yeah.
here I am, I'm seeing this fountain. And then I get, and I'm like off behind this tree looking, and this little angel is telling the fountain, there's somebody here. There's somebody here. Did you know that there's a person? It's not there is an angel, but she's not an angel right now. She's an angel, but she's not here. You need to help her. And I'm going, oh my God, why is this thing narking me out? Like, why is this thing narking me out? Well, I hear this booming voice come up out of the fountain that I need to come forth. That, don't you know I already invited her? That's why she's here. Okay. Now you have all of my attention. Yes, sir, I'm here. Yes, sir. What am I doing? Is how I felt. And then I was instructed that the reason I was there was because I was to receive my healing, and that in my time, when it was to happen, that I would give this to others. And I got to
Oh.
step up and walk into the fountain, and I got to stand as the water poured down over me,
Uh-huh.
allow it to pour into me. And I opened my crown, my third eye, my heart, my throat, my heart, my all of the different sacrals. And this water ran through me and it regenerated me. It gave me life. It gave me healing. I went to the waters.
Oh.
A Christian, you understand that Christ is the living waters.
Uh-huh.
If you know about the stream of consciousness, you know that the stream of consciousness is an ever flowing energy, water and energy. What is Christ but the life well, the well springs of life? So I got to go and be cleansed in that fountain, and they gave me that ability to bring it to others
Mm-hmm.
because I had to go get mine first. Because I couldn't teach this, I couldn't do this, I wasn't going to be able to be who I am without that. So that's what I wanted to do for you, is give you that opportunity. And it's just a mental visual we go through. I walk you through it. We're going to go into the garden, at the gate, into the garden, down the path. If there's a bench, if there's anyone there that wants to give you a message, you receive it. If not, we go into the fountain and you still receive your healing. And I want to take you through that. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, so all we do is we just close our eyes and just listen to my voice as I take you through. You won't
Okay.
forget anything. You'll just be able to be restored to the foundations of creation and what God intended you from the beginning. So we'll release anything that's holding us back from that storyline and then fill up what is the truth, we're whole and complete from the foundations of creation. So go ahead and take in a deep breath with your eyes closed. And exhale. Again, inhale. And exhale. Just go as deep as you need to. And exhale. It doesn't have to be deep. And I just want you to listen to my voice. We are now sitting on the grassy patch before the gates. The gates have closed and they're lit up. Now they're opening, they're rolling back. You can see a clearing, you can see the path, you can see the grass. But the gates begin to close with a white light. And again, they open. And quickly again, they're closing. But this time you feel that you're supposed to be in there on the other side. So when they begin to roll back again, you go ahead and step in onto the path. Now I want you just to imagine right now that you're standing on that path on the inside of that gate. And to your right, you can see the tall grass blades up to your knees with sprinkled across the top with an array of all the different wildflowers you've seen over the course of your life. And before you, you can see the path that goes up and around the bend. And to the left, you see the grass, trees, bushes, and flowers of every type. As you journey along, looking out, you can probably even see as the birds flutter up and land in the top of the trees. You may even hear a bee buzz by as it goes to land upon the flowers that are on the right, ebbing and flowing through those grass blades that are going with the wind as it's turning. You begin to come along that path and you turn. As you turn to the right, you see that there's a bench. And on this bench, I want you to see if there's anyone or anything that would like to provide you a message. Take a moment. You may not see them, but you may feel them. And if you know that there's a message, I just want you to feel that in your heart and receive it today. Do you need to take a moment and sit down with them? And when you're ready, we're going to go ahead and we're going to step onto the path, which was to the left of you when you first arrived, now in front of you. We're going to step forward and walk down the little path. It's going to take you up the 2 steps, and mentally you're going to step up, and mentally you're going to step up and then down into the basin. When your feet hit the bottom of the basin of this waterfall, as the water is trickling down, down, down into each one of the different tiers, as it's flowing down, you see it flowing down in front of you with this white light cascading water effect. It is so inviting, so crystal clear, and so ready for you to receive your healing restoration. So I want you to imagine yourself walking as the waters are swirling and twirling around your feet as you take each step, as you feel those waters swirling and twirling. As the waters above you are coming down and now over the top of your head, allow yourself to open up and be receiving of the white light coming down from above. As above, so below. Allowing for the white light to come in, go into the third eye, into the mind circulating, creating a spiraling ball, taking up the storylines that are no longer serving our highest good, taking away those stories that death and pain and suffering are our lot. We're going to remove all of those things and bring us back into healing and restoration, healing power, that all things work together for the good of the source that comes from above, so below, allowing us to be restored to the completion of the wholeness and the completion from the foundations of the earth, bringing just truth, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, health, wealth. Because God didn't have time to make a nobody, he only had time to make somebody. And Carol, this is certainly for you too. Bringing this down from the third eye into the throat, removing any of those storylines that keep us bound up, locked up, or kept up from being able to be free from those things that are hurting us. but giving us the ability to speak our truth, that we are whole and complete from the foundations of creation, and that our body can come back into the proper alignment in our DNA structure, that every cell will resonate with nothing but love within our body. And with that, we can be totally restored. Bringing this down into the heart, allowing it to pixelate out down through the arms, into the fingertips, up and back into the heart center, pressing down through it like a mighty rushing waterfall, pushing down through, cleansing away any of the hardness, the bitterness, the pain that we've carried for years, bringing us in, making our heart pliable, restorable, and fixed on the good things, the higher good of our well-being. Bringing this down into the solar plex, breaking up any blocks, removing any resistance, bringing it down into the sacral, taking away the patterns that we've repeated that are no longer serving our highest good, but replacing it with the ability to accept that only good things are before me. Bringing that down into the root of our very being, that from the foundations of creation, we have been whole and complete, and that we will begin to resonate with that truth again. Bringing it down, out through the thighs, down through the calves, down into the soles of our feet, and pressing away the old storyline that is no longer serving our highest good, the pain, the unwell, the dis-ease, the circumstances and the stories that have caused frustration, irritation, pain, bitterness, unforgiveness, and releasing that into the ground as far away from you as possible, bringing just back the white light and the waters into the toes, into the soles of your feet, up into your ankles and in your calves and in your thighs, up into the root. And now I want to bring that up, straight back up through the spinal column, into the brainstem, bringing back a balance to who you are, bringing it around to the frontal cortex, allowing for all of your cells to collaborate in the frontal cortex, bringing you back to balance, bringing you healing, restoration power. As above, so below, so be it. And as you're ready, go ahead and release it back out through the crown, give it back to God, and say thank you for your healing today. And when you're ready, wiggle your fingers and your toes. Take another breath in and exhale. And go ahead and leave you with that today, Miss Carol, for a healing. I felt
No, thank you.
you
I hope it works.
one day at a time. One day at a time. It's slow. We're doing it from a cellular level, hon. And we'll see. We
Thank you.
ultimately, it is all up to God. It's not up to us. We know that.
Right.
So we just stand in and just let him do what he's going to do. And we love him through the process.
Thank you for today, Darla.
You're very welcome, hon. Let me go ahead and hit the end on the recording.